First, let me introduce myself. I am Professor Bokyeon Park. Okay, please, I want to listen to your voice. Please say hello.
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 Okay, very nice. Okay, now I can see, I can listen to your voice. Okay, my name is Professor Park. Now I am teaching at the Graduate School of Pan Pacific International Studies at Kyongsung University. I'm very, very nice to meet you and to talk with you. And we spent a lot of time for setting up the system. But it was very successful to set up the system. Everything is okay?
Yes.
Oh, very nice. Okay. So, today I will talk about the Korean economy very briefly. Are you interested in Korean economy?
Yes.
Okay, very nice. Okay. Have you been to Korea?
Yes.
Anyone? Oh, really?
Yes.
When did you come to Korea? What year?
This summer. Last summer.
Summer. Last summer.
Yes, last summer. The summer.
Okay, good. What was your impression in Korea?
Amazing.
Amazing. Okay.
I spent all my day there. That's why I can't express all my feelings. Maybe I could have gained more experience if I stayed for longer. But, well, at least I have plans for the upcoming summer as well to go to Korea, but for a longer period of time, for 2 months. So.
Okay, great. So before you come to Korea, what was your first, when you think about the Korea, what occurred to you first? It means, my question was, what was your first impression on Korea before coming to Korea?
I'm keen on K-pop and drama, actually.
Okay, good. Okay, Korean culture.
Yes.
Okay. I think many of the students in Moscow or Russia may think that, Korea is very, very dangerous, very risky place because Korea is confronting with the North Korea, and the North Korea is threatening the military attack to South Korea or other countries, right?
Actually, not at all.
Not at all? Oh, really? You mean that you feel very safe in Korea?
Yes.
Okay. Anyway, as you know, Korea is divided. The Korean peninsula is divided into two Koreas. The first one is South Korea and the other is North Korea. And the division happened in year of 1945 when we became independent of Japanese rule, colonial rule. That is the start of Korean modern history. Do you know this historical background of Korean Peninsula?
Yes, of course. Also, we know about the war, 1950-1953.
Yeah, great. So, also now, Korea is very famous for the developed manufacturing, particularly development in electronics or the IT technology, right?
Yes, it's one of the leader in nowadays world.
Okay. So, but now Korea is the one of the country with the best technology in IT. But when we look back our history about 50 years ago, Korea was one of the poorest country in the world. 1950s and 1960s. For example, in year of 1960, Korea's average income level was just $100 per person, which was lower than the average of many of the sub-Saharan African countries. So in that sense, Korean economy is described as economic miracle, because within only 40 or 15 years, Korea achieved fast economic growth. So today, I will shortly introduce the Korean brief history after independence and until up to now. Okay?
Okay.
Have you ever learned about the Korean economic development process after independence?
Well, in general, maybe, without any particular details.
Okay. So, okay. Right after the independence year of 1945, and about for 10 years after independence, Korean society was in very serious chaos, ideologically and politically very unstable the status. Because some of the Korean intellectual leaders believed that the Korean economy need to be oriented toward the socialistic or the planning economy. But the other part thought that Korean economy needed to pursue very, market-oriented economy. So there was ideological confrontations. But right after independence, South Korea was, managed or dominated by United States. So South Korea very naturally adopted American-style economic systems. Okay, so private property right was protected, and the Korean government tried to privatize the former state-owned enterprises. Okay, it was dramatically contrasted with the North Korea. As you know, the North Korea adopted socialistic economic systems. Okay, and so in 1950s was characterized by very serious confrontation between South Korea and North Korea, both politically and ideologically and economically. In 1960, the year of 1960 was a very important breakthrough in Korean economy. In 1960, there was the massive demonstration or protest. It was initiated by the Korean student. They strongly demanded democratization in Korea. In 1950s, Korean society was very corrupt and very authoritarian or non-democratic. But enlightened student demanded democratizations. It was a kind of the student revolution, but the student revolution was not so successful. Right after the student revolution, the military coup happened in 1961. The military coup was led by the General Pak Jong-hee. Now, this General Pak Jong-hee, or former president, was a kind of the Korean fodder for Korean modernizations, because right after he was inaugurated in the presidential the leadership, he started Korean modernizations, or modernizations were Korean industrializations. So he made the best effort to make Korean economy to be very industrialized. His industrial policy was very unique because he had a very strong belief in the role of the state in Korean in economic planning or industrializations. And also, he believed that the export should be the driving force of Korean industrializations. Why? Because the Korean domestic market size is very small. Okay? And the population size, then the population size was just 30 million, and the average income level was just as low as $100. Okay? So domestic market, where the domestic purchasing power was very, very limited. So even if Korean enterprises produce something, the product couldn't be sold at the local market. Okay? So his policy priority was put on the export promotion. Okay? So then in 1960s, what was the most important competitive factors or the competitiveness of Korean economy? First, that was the cheap labors. Okay? Low income means the very cheap labor cost. But fortunately, Korean laborers was very industrious and very disciplined. Okay? So, and also relatively well educated. One of the most important characteristic of Korean society was that the, how can I say, the strong priority on education. Then Korea society was very agricultural and very traditional, but Korea had a very long history with the priority on educations. Okay, Korea, before the modernizations, Korean society has a very long history of bureaucracy. Bureaucracy means the whole land was managed or administered by the very strong government, even before the modernizations. Okay, and very unified society under the control of the government. And traditional bureaucrats was also very capable. Okay, the bureaucracy was composed of very able technocrats. So, searching a good history also worked well in developing our economy in 1960s and 70s. Okay, so another advantage that the Korea had in 1960 was that very favorable world market conditions. Why? So in 1960s and 70s, world economy was booming. Okay, very high economic growth rate in the United States and the European markets. It means that the potential Korean export market condition was very nice. And also, Korea had a very favorable, how can I say, trading environment from Western society, Western economy, particularly from the United States, because United States thought that South Korea is a kind of the show window for the capitalism. Okay, United States wanted to show that South Korea is prospering. It means that South Korea is a very typical example of capitalistic society. So, to demonstrate the success, economic success in South Korea, United States opened its market to Korean product, particularly textile or garment. Okay, textile or garment industry is a very labor-intensive industry. It means that in those industries, most important competitive factor is cheap labors. Okay, so thanks to the combination of Korea's very well-disciplined labor force and the open market of U.S. economy, produced a big increase in Korean export to U.S. Okay, the fast increasing export became the first driving force for Korean industrialization. In 1960s and 70s, okay, Korea's average economic growth rate was almost 10% every year. Okay, every year. So, in early 1960s, Korea's income level was just 100, but only in 10 years later, the income level increased up to $1,000. Okay, so 10 times higher within only 10 years. Okay, in 1970s, Korean government adopted a little different development or the economic strategy. The strategy was the diversification of industrial structure. In 1960s means the first stage of the industrialization. Korea's leading industrial sector was just the textile or garment, very labor-intensive industries. But from 1970s, Korean government tried to promote capital-intensive industries, or the more technologically advanced industries. What kind of industries are capital-intensive or more advanced, technologically advanced? Okay, the industries were steel and iron industry, or the shipbuilding industries and the automobile industries and electric industries. Okay, so, but in order to promote those industries, Korea needed more capitals, larger financings. Okay. So let me check your, how can I say, listening to me. Still, you are listening to my voice, my lecture?
Yes, of course.
Okay, good. Now you can understand what I told.
Yes.
Okay?
Thank you.
Okay. You can follow my lecture?
Yes, we were following completely.
Okay, good. Very nice. Now I'm talking about the 1970s economic condition in Korea. Okay? So in 1970s, actually Korea was short of the capital because Korea was still very poor and the domestic saving was very small, and our natural resource condition is very poor. It is totally different from Russia. Your country, Russia, has a very, very rich natural resource like the crude oil, natural gas, and the many kinds of the mineral resources, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. So, actually, I also have been to Moscow and St. Petersburg about 10 years ago. It was very nice. Although the weather was very, very cold because I visited there in the winter. Okay? So anyway, my point is that Korea has very poor natural resource endowment. So Korea, there is zero or no crude oil reserve in Korean peninsula. No crude oil, no natural gas. Absolutely zero. Okay? Korea had to import all of the crude oil and all of the natural gas from outside. Okay? Mostly for crude oil, Korea depended on the Middle East, like the Saudi Arabia or Kuwait. Okay? For natural gas, we are importing liquid natural gas, LNG, from Australia and now also from the Middle East. Actually, we really want to import LNG or natural gas from Russia, particularly from Siberia. Okay? So, but to transport the natural gas through pipeline from Siberia to South Korea, the pipeline should go through the North Korea. Okay? But because of the current military confrontations, the pipeline cannot get through the North Korea. But now I am very, very optimistic about the Korean Peninsular peace conditions. You know that have you heard about the news that the North Korean political leader Kim Jong-un will soon meet the American president?
Yes, in April, in the end of
Okay, in April, right. So if the summit meeting is very successful, then I think Korean Peninsula will become more stable and more peaceful. Then in the future, I believe that the pipeline or the energy network between South Korea and Russia will be developed or established. Okay. Anyway, because of the short of the capital, Korea, invited a lot of foreign debt from outside. Korean government and the Korean enterprises borrowed money from international markets in 1970s. But so it means that Korean external debt, external loan, fast increased because of very large external debt became a reason for the financial crisis in the early 1980s. Okay, so early 1980s, Korean economic condition was relatively bad, and also in 1980 we had another military coup led by soldier. Okay, so but from the mid 1980s. Korean economy faced very, very nice world economy, international economic conditions. First of all, the price of the international oil went down. Okay, as I said, Korea was the net importer of crude oil. So the high price of crude oil was a very big burden Korean economy. But from the mid 1980s, because of the decline in the oil price, Korean economic condition got better. Okay, this is the totally different, impact on Korean economy from Russian economy. If the oil price goes down, then that is bad news for Russian economy. But in Korea, it is good news. Okay? And also, Korean enterprises developed their own technology, particularly in electronics and automobiles and shipbuildings. Now, which company is the most famous Korean company in the world? Okay. Can you name some Korean companies?
Yes. LG, Samsung.
Samsung, LG, right. Samsung and LG. Samsung is the leading enterprise in mobile phone and also semiconductors, right? And LG is also best manufacturer of electric appliances like refrigerators and the television and also mobile phone, right?
Yes.
Right. Those the current world best companies, built its reputation from 1980s, actually. So in 1986, Samsung first produced the semiconductor. That was the first production of semiconductor by Samsung in 1986. Okay, then it was a very small step for world-class companies, but the production of a semiconductor make the big fortune. Okay, because the global demand for semiconductor very fast, rather very dramatically increased. Okay. That was the first momentum that Samsung Electronics became the worldwide enterprises. And then in late 1990s, Samsung Electronics started to produce the mobile phone. Okay? So, first, the Samsung's mobile phone was just a copy of the Apple. You know the Apple, right?
Yes.
Apple was the first producer of a mobile phone. At first, Samsung tried to copy the Apple mobile phone, but over time, Samsung developed its own technology and its own design. So now, Samsung's mobile phone market share is much larger than the share of U.S. Apple's. Okay, search on the Samsung story is just similar to the whole Korean economic story. It means the Korean economy is can be described as the catching up process. At first, Korea tried to catch up with the Japanese economy. Okay? Japanese economy was a model for Korean economy. Okay? Korean enterprises tried to observe the technology from Japanese enterprises. At first, it just copied. But finally, they successfully caught up with the Japanese technology. And now, their technology exceeded the Japanese technology in some parts. Okay? So, economic catching up is the process for Korean economic development. But this catching up process was never smooth. It means Korean economy faced also a few crises, economic crises. Okay, as I explained, in 1980 or in 1981, Korea first experienced economic crisis, and another economic crisis happened in 1997. 1997. Have you heard about the Asian financial crisis of 1997?
Yes, of course.
Okay, good. Korea also fell into the storm of that economic or the financial crisis in 1997. Why? Why Korean economy faced the serious economic crisis? What was the problem? One of the most fundamental problem was in international trade. International trade. Even though Korean export increased very fast for the previous 30 years, but yes, it is true that Korean export fast increased, but import also increased very fast. Okay? So when we look at the trade balance, okay, trade balance means the export minus import, right? The balance always recorded minus or negative. It means that import was always larger than export. Okay? So Korean trade balance was always in deficit, negative. Okay? So, but Korea needed to accumulate its foreign reserve to respond to emergency conditions. Okay? But when the trade balance was always in deficit, how could Korea accumulate its foreign reserve? How could Korea secure foreign currency at central bank? The only way is to borrow the foreign money, okay, from outside. Okay. So, just before the financial crisis in 1997, Korean government and Korean enterprises had a huge amount of foreign debt, okay? A lot of financial liability to outside. When in Southeast Asia financial crisis happened, Korean financial condition also became very worse, and the credibility in Korean economy also became worse. Okay, so foreign banks asked the Korean companies and government to pay back the loan. Okay, now it's time you have to pay back your loan to us. Okay, most of the foreign banks asked for repayment of the loan. To meet certain repayment requirement, Korean Central Bank had to provide the foreign reserves. Okay, finally, the previous or existing foreign reserves could not meet all of the repayment request. Okay, so it was just the bankruptcy of government. The entire Korean economy could not meet the repayment call. It was like the government bankruptcy. Okay, so certain government bankruptcy became the economic crisis. Korean government had to go to the International Monetary Fund, IMF, to borrow the foreign currency. Okay, IMF provided the emergency foreign currency to Korea, but IMF asked the Korean government to follow the policy recommendation by IMF. Okay, so temporarily, Korean government lost its economic policy autonomy. It means the Korean government had to follow the guidance or recommendation from IMF. It was the financial crisis. Okay, so suddenly Korean the value of Korean currency was much depreciated. It means the value of Korean currency fell down sharply, and also many of Korean enterprises had to shut down their factories, and as a result, a lot of unemployed came out, and also the price of stocks and the price of houses dramatically fell down. It was almost how can I say, collapse of the economy. But fortunately, Korean economy was recovered very fast, thanks to the very fast increase in export. Okay, so right after the financial crisis, Korean economy started to recoup the trade surplus. It means the export exceeded its import. So with the surplus, Korean economy could pay back the external debt very successfully. Okay, so after the financial crisis, Korean government adopted more, aggressive economic policy. Okay, means that most of the Korean enterprises try to be more globalized. More globalized means many of Korean big companies built new factories in other countries. For instance, you know the Hyundai automobile, Hyundai car?
Yeah.
Okay. So, before the financial crisis, most of the Hyundai automobile was manufactured inside of Korea. But right after the financial crisis, Hyundai automobile built many factories overseas in the United States, in Europe, sometimes in China. Okay, so enterprises became globalized. The same happened to other companies like the Samsung Electronics and the LGs. Okay, so another fortune fell to Korean economy. That was the rise of Chinese economy. Okay, now Korean Peninsula is neighboring to the China, right? So it means that Korea is very, very close to the east coastal area of China. Okay, so the fast rise in Chinese economy was great fortune to the South Korean economy. Okay, so the Korea's export to China very fast increased. So again, Korean economy started to its economic growth rate as high as 7% every year, early 21st centuries. Okay. Okay. So until now, I summarized the Korean economic growth. Okay. So Korea achieved a very continuous economic growth, although sometimes it faced the economic crisis 2 times. But But before wrapping up my lecture, let me shortly mention the problems, the current issues or the problems or challenges in Korean society. Okay? I told only the bright side of Korean economy, but it is true that we have dark sides. I think one of the most important challenges is that the demographic change. Usually, when a society face the demographic problem, it is the population explosion. It means the very high birth rate or high fertility rate. But in Korea, the problem is the opposite. One of the most serious problems in Korea is that very low birth rate or the very low fertility rate. Okay? It means many of the Korean couples very strongly hesitate to give a birth to baby. Okay? And many of Korean women or the young women don't like to get married. Okay? So now the Korea's average fertility rate is just 1.1. It means the every Korean woman give a birth only one time for her lifelong. Okay, so 1.1 fertility rate is the lowest rate in the world. Lowest rate. Yeah, literally lowest rate. Okay, so this very low fertility rate dramatically changed the Korea's demographic composition. Okay, so life expectancy is getting longer and longer. It means the elderly group became very fat, but the younger generation is very slim. Okay, so in the near future, the total size of Korean population will shrink, and also our working labor force may be smaller. Okay, it is in the long run, it is a big threat to the future Korean economy. Okay, that is one problem. Another problem is that the widening economic gap among classes. Okay, so it means the increasing economic inequality or income inequality. Okay, actually, traditionally, Korean economy was very famous for equality. It means the income gap was very small. Okay, so in that sense, Korean economy was a textbook where the good example which achieved both fast economic growth and also very equal income distribution. But it is just a history. Now, Korea's inequality problem is, getting worse. So, top 20% income level is about the 10-fold of bottom 20% income. Okay, and this income gap is also widening. Okay. And the third challenge is that average economic growth rate in Korea is getting lower and lower. As I explained, even in early year of 2000, early 21st century, means just the 10 or 15 years ago, Korea's average income growth rate was 7%. One generation ago, about 8 or 10%. But now, currently, Korea's economic growth rate is just less than 3%. Less than 3%. So economic growth rate is too low, and also many of Korean youngsters cannot find their jobs at labor market. So now Korea youth unemployment rate is as high as 10%. Okay, it is a big challenge to the economy. Also, big challenge to Korean college graduate. Okay, so these three are most serious challenges to current Korean economy. Okay, so let me wrap up my brief introduction to Korean economy. Do you have any question about my lecture or the Korean economy, or any other aspects of Korean society? Any question is welcome.
First of all, thank you for the wonderful lecture. And I would like to ask a question. You said that the Japanese economy was a model for the South Korean economy, and could you enumerate the main features that can be adopted?
Oh, sorry. Please repeat the last part. Okay. What was your question?
Yeah. Could you point out the main features that were adopted by South Korea? I'm talking about the Japanese model.
Okay. The future of the Japanese model, you mean? Okay?
Okay.
Okay, sure. First, one of the most important features of the Japanese model or the Korean model is the very strong intervention by the government. Okay, the role of the government is very important. But if the market economy cannot successfully replace the role of the government, then the efficiency of the whole economy may be worse. Okay, so at first the government play very important or the effective roles, but as the size of the market economy get bigger, then the market economy needs to replace the role of the government. Okay? Mm-hmm. But the market economy cannot work very smoothly, and also the effectiveness or the efficiency of the government also get worse than the entire economy or entire, society cannot improve the efficiency. I think fundamentally it is the, current condition of Korean economy. It means the market economy is not working very well right now, and also the efficiency of government also getting worse. Okay, and also, okay. Any other question?
Yes, you said that economic growth is getting slower, right? And I've heard that South Korea faced some sort of competition with China in the sphere of electronics, like producing smartphones, some domestic stuff like refrigerators and so on. So how do you think this problem will be solved in the future? Because I suppose that it's one challenge for South Korea as well.
Okay, good. I think, yes, it is very, very serious challenge. It is very difficult challenge to solve, I think. Okay, because China is very fast developing its technology. Just 10 years ago, China was just a market for Korean economy. Market for Korean economy. It means the most of the manufacturers or the product could be sold at the Chinese market. But now China is changing its economy as competitor in production with Korea. In that sense, it means 10 years ago, Chinese economy was opportunity to Korean economy. But now Chinese economy is a challenge to Korean economy. So in some industries, we are losing competitiveness, particularly in shipbuilding industries and the steel and iron industries, because the price competitiveness in China is much better than the competitiveness in Korea. Okay, so now a few Korean shipbuilding, but not big, but small or medium-sized shipbuilding companies were shut down because of the lost competitiveness. Okay, also steel and iron companies. One of the biggest steel and iron company in Korea is the POSCO, is severely competing with China. And also recently, you know that the United States imposed the very high tariff rate on the steel and iron product from Korea and China. It is also very challenging. Anyway, but even if there is some competition from China, is not so pessimistic, because the facing with the competition from outside, many of the Korean companies are successfully upgrading its technology. Okay, one of a good example is the Samsung. Okay, like the Chinese cheap mobile phone, like the Xiaomi mobile phone. Is competing with the Samsung mobile phone, but Samsung is upgrade and developed the high-end technology. Okay, so through the competition, the enterprises can grow, I think.
Thank you.
Okay. It means partly pessimistic, but partly it can be solved in some industries. Any other question? No? Okay, so this lecture was just a sample lecture, okay? I think that in the future, more excellent professors will give a better lecture than me, okay? It was very, very nice to talk with you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, and in the next part. Okay, thank you. Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.